What up, boys? It's your boy Trippy, and we're back. And we're back again with the podcast. And look, I know I need to probably start releasing these on a schedule again. I used to do them once a week, preferably on the weekends. And I'm going to get back to that, because now I'm just kind of releasing these things at random and kind of scattergunning videos all over the place. Nah, bruh. We're going to start back to having regularly scheduled content without any type of hiccups. Anyways, we're not going to focus too much on that because we got a lot to talk about. Let's go ahead and hop into it. Let's talk about Khamzat Chimaev. And he proved to us that, oh my gosh, he's not just this juggernaut superhero that's going to blow through the entire division without a scratch. People were literally telling me that, oh my gosh, Khamzat Chimaev has only had one strike landed on him, and that is going to be like that for the rest of his career. I had somebody tell me that he bets that Khamzat Chimaev only gets landed on 10 times, that his opponents will land a total amount of 10 strikes on him for the remainder of his career. And that goes for Usman, that goes for Covington, that goes for his entire title reign. 10 strikes is all he's going to absorb over his entire career. And I said, dude, man, you guys are really blowing this guy out of proportion. And I could have seen it because a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, this is just a bigger Khabib. Whenever I seen him fight Li Jingliang, I realized that this guy isn't as skilled as Khabib, and he's not. On the feet, he actually is. He's actually a better striker than Khabib, and arguably he's a better striker than Makhachev. My thing is that whenever it goes to the ground, it's more brute strength and explosive power than technique and sound fundamentals on the ground. It's not that. It's more so he is so much bigger and stronger than everybody. He has that wrestling background, that Dagestani wrestling style background. He does have that skill, but it's more so he has the power and the strength to just kind of pick you up, throw you on your butt. If you try to scramble or you try to do anything, he literally will use brute force to kind of literally pick you up and put you where he wants you to be, and then start using his technique to submit you or whatever the heck. You know, there is skill on the ground. I'm not trying to say that, oh my gosh, he has no skill on the ground. He does. What I'm trying to say is that he uses a lot of explosive power to get his dominant success on the ground. It's not just all technique. And I believe that Khabib and Makhachev has more technique than Khamzat Chimaev. Prove me wrong. Anyways, so what is Khamzat Chimaev's weaknesses? If I'm being real, I've kind of already outlined them, but it's just so the fact that the guy, when he is striking, doesn't move his head. He's got that Charles Oliveira level of head movement. I've said this before. He really needs to fix that, man, because Kamaru Usman hits harder than Gilbert Burns, arguably. He's going to get his clock cleaned. The other thing is that he arguably has a weak gas tank. Now, he kept up with Gilbert Burns, but that was also, I seen the Weasel say, like, oh my gosh, they were throwing, like heavy bombs the entire time. Even Gilbert Burns was slowing down. True. But Gilbert Burns doesn't have that beautiful of a gas tank either. He can't just... I see him work on his cardio, and I see him do these hit trainings, and he does crazy stuff, only for him to get gassed out in the third round. Now, in my opinion, there was more reasons for that. I feel like the reason why he kept swinging and swinging and swinging is because he was just anxious. That's just how he was fighting, because I think that he was a bit scared of Khamzat Chimaev going into that. And that the overwhelming pressure of like, oh my gosh, I can't just get crushed by this guy. I can't just do this, do that, because people are going to troll me. People are going to make fun of me that I lost to a guy who's number 11th ranked with only 4 fights in the UFC, you know? I think that the pressure got to him, and so there wasn't a lot of technique, there wasn't a lot of, you know, like volume and control. He just kind of just swung haymakers for the majority of the time and gassed himself out. Khamzat Chimaev did the same thing, but his was more so his lack of defense, and it was a lack of experience. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. He made a lot of errors, like constantly going and brawling and exchanging with Gilbert Burns. I thought that was really weird, but I just seen that he was just so... He'd hurt Gilbert Burns, and he'd just go out of control, get too crazy with it, and then just kind of like start trading like hands with Gilbert Burns. And I just thought, like, dude, you better stop doing that, because you're going to get clipped. And he did. Multiple times. Now, whenever I watched it live, I did think that Khamzat Chimaev won the fight, but I'm starting to see people say that Gilbert Burns got robbed. Dude, it wasn't a robbery. We throw the term robbery around too much in MMA, man. Not everything's a robbery. And I was cheering for Burns. But at the end of the fight, I was like, man, Khamzat won that by decision. Which is, everybody thought that Khamzat Chimaev was going to run through Gilbert Burns. And that is why I think that Khamzat Chimaev's hype kind of got, like, a little halted. You know what I mean? The hype train kind of slowed down a little bit. Because everybody thought that he was just going to erase Burns. And I was like, man, how could you say that when this guy's strength is on the ground and Gilbert Burns is an expert jiu-jitsu specialist? And I had people tell me Gilbert Burns' jiu-jitsu is going to be meaningless in this fight. I said, how can you say that? How can you call yourself an MMA fan and say that Gilbert Burns, like a multiple-time jiu-jitsu world champion, you guys are telling me that his ground game is going to be meaningless in this fight? Why would I couldn't wrap my head around that. I'm like, why are these people saying that? Because of this guy picked up. You got to think, who was Khamzat Chimaev's opponents before he fought Gilbert Burns? He fought bums. Gerald Mearshart was the only legitimate guy that Khamzat Chimaev fought. He knocked him out with one punch. Okay, give credit where credit is due. He did that. You know what I mean? So I could give Khamzat Chimaev one legitimate win in his career. All the other guys were bums. Li Jingliang, don't get me wrong, was not a bum. He was number 11th ranked. Or he was the number 11th ranked welterweight at the time before Khamzat Chimaev took his place. Khamzat Chimaev obviously destroyed him and cut through him like a hot knife through butter. You know what I mean? Yeah, sure, that happened. I'm not arguing that. Li Jingliang is also undersized. He's an undersized welterweight. Yeah, sure, he's small or he's fast. But people were like, Li Jingliang is huge for the division. No, he is not. No, he is not. Why are people trying to overrate Khamzat Chimaev's wins? He's not. He also had a huge hole in his grappling game. He did. I don't see why people are just ignoring this. That was as hand-picked of a top-ranked matchup as it gets for Khamzat Chimaev. They handpicked that opponent for him just so he can get the notoriety of beating a top 15 opponent. The UFC did that for him. With Burns, they didn't do him so many favors, but I think that the UFC even thought Burns doesn't have a chin. Burns is going to get into sloppy exchanges with him. Chimaev could knock him out. Boy, were they wrong. And Burns ended up proving my point that this guy isn't a freaking superhero. But anyway, I was talking about his weaknesses. In my opinion, his weaknesses are probably going to be his lack of head movement, his eagerness to get into brawls and exchanges. Eventually, that chin will get touched, and he might take a punishment for it. And the fact that he tried to take Burns down. And the reason why, people are like, oh my gosh, he wanted to test himself on the feet. No, he didn't. The reason why he stopped going to the ground game with Burns is because he didn't want to. It's the same reason why Covington and Usman didn't shoot on each other in the first fight. They didn't want to shoot for a takedown and waste the energy trying to take the guy down. And then them not being able to do anything on the ground with them. That is why he stopped. He was like, okay, there's no point in taking this guy down. I'm just wasting energy. I'm going to strike with him because it's less energy. That is why he did it. Not because he wanted to test himself out. He wanted to test out his stand-up. That is nonsense. And the people who are saying that is just trying to nut ride for Khamzat Chimaev. Anyway, moving on, man. I really want to see him fight Covington, and I really want to see him fight Usman because I want to see because people are like, oh my gosh, Colby Covington's going to crush him now because of the gas tank. I don't see it that way. What I'm trying to tell you guys is that Covington, man, doesn't have the type of grappling that Burns does. He has the wrestling, and he has the takedown defense potentially to stop Khamzat Chimaev's wrestling. But if Khamzat Chimaev gets Covington to his back, I feel like he's going to smash Covington, man. Same thing for Usman, especially Usman, bro. We've never seen Usman on his back. The moment that this guy gets put on his back, he's probably going to get exposed. I'm just being real. If Chimaev can take Usman down and put him on his back, he's going to smash these guys, man. He's going to cut through them like butter. He's going to submit Usman. He's going to submit Covington. But the key word is if he can do it. And the scary thing for me with Khamzat is that he shoots for a takedown, and he shoots for multiple takedowns. Colby defends them, and he then wastes the energy, slows down in the second and third round, and Colby Covington just starts pushing the pace on him, picking him apart. the dangerous thing, I think that he could beat Colby. Why? It's because I believe the same issue that Colby Covington ran into with Usman, he's going to run into that same thing with Chimaev. And that is not being able to take Chimaev down, because we've seen Chimaev's takedown defense is literally effortless. I don't think that Colby can take Chimaev down. I really don't. And I think that Colby won't be able to use his wrestling, which is going to be a big key factor into him wearing out Khamzat. I think that he's not going to be able to do it, and he's going to be forced to strike with Chimaev. And really what that's going to mean is that if the power difference isn't going to be too big, Colby can then have some success on the feet. If it is, and he's got to watch himself, and he tries to fight a more technical fight like he did with Usman in the second fight, Chimaev might knock him out. And that's worrying for me, Or he might just simply outstrike him, because Chimaev has good boxing, good hands, So that's why I think that he can beat Covington. Usman is just the fact that Usman has the necessary power to knock Chimaev out on the feet. If Chimaev, and he has stronger takedown defense, evidence-wise, than Colby Covington. So Chimaev could shoot on Usman, can't take him down, waste the energy, now he's forced to strike. I think that he can outbox Usman for the most part until he gets caught because he doesn't move his head. Usman's going to lay him out because Usman has the power to knock him out, like clean his clock. Also, the Weasel brought this up, credit to the Weasel, is that Usman can hit Chimaev in ways that Burns can't. What do I mean by that? I mean that Usman can strike with him from a distance. Usman's longer than Chimaev in terms of like reach and stuff like that. He can hit Chimaev where Burns couldn't. He can strike with Chimaev from the outside, you know what I mean? And really tag him with that right hand and put him out. Boy, that's going to be thunderous. That's interesting. That's interesting. But to say that Chimaev, oh my gosh, he can't beat Usman or he can't beat Covington, slow down. He definitely can. Is it likely after seeing that fight? Not really. I think he probably gets knocked out by Usman. And I think for Covington, I think that he can beat Covington, but it all depends on if he doesn't gas out or not, or gas out enough where Covington can just outpoint him. Anyways, now we move on. Let's talk about Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan. Or no, actually, matter of fact, I want to tackle this first. Let's talk about Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. And what's next for Volkanovski after that title defense? And can Max Holloway beat Alexander Volkanovski? Dude, after seeing that, you guys, that Volkanovski is so good, man. He's so fast. And he's improved with his hands so much. I don't see how Max beats him. Maybe outstriking him. I can see Max outstriking him. But the thing is that Volkanovski was able to take this guy down. Volkanovski doesn't have good control. So Max can always pop back up to his feet. I noticed that about Volkanovski, is that when he takes guys down, they always pop back up and they always separate. Because he doesn't have that level of grappling where he can just control opponents on the ground and just smash them. He doesn't have that yet. He can develop it, but I don't think that he's there yet. And I don't think that he's going to be able to do that to Max. He wasn't able to do it to the Zombie. I don't think he's going to be able to do it to Max. What Max has to do is outstrike him without getting hit and to stop the takedowns. So basically that means that Max has to fight a perfect fight almost. And I just don't see him being able to get into those exchanges. Also block the leg kicks, which Volkanovski is just skilled at doing. He's one of the best leg kickers in the sport. He has to stop the leg kicks, and he has to outstrike Volkanovski, get into these exchanges, and outgun Volkanovski in the exchanges, win those exchanges, and not get hit and not get taken down. Max Holloway takes a lot of damage, we know that. And we don't know if he can stop the takedowns of Volkanovski, because that is what won Volkanovski their second fight. Which I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, Max Holloway won that fight. Being one of those people, and people on the internet like to say, oh my gosh, you're an idiot for thinking Max won that fight. No, you're not. Max scored 2 knockdowns. And the rounds that he scored knockdowns in, those should have been 10-8 rounds. Those should have been 2 10-8 rounds. I don't think that Volkanovski did enough to win that third round. But you know what? Call me crazy, Anyway, so that's my outlook on it. People like to argue me about it because, oh my gosh, Volkanovski took him down. He also did nothing with the takedown, which is what a lot of people were arguing about, oh, Francis Ngannou didn't beat Cyril Gane because he took him down and just laid on him. Volkanovski took Max Holloway down, held him there for maybe about 30 seconds, or not 30 seconds, held him there for maybe like 20 seconds. Max got back up to his feet and separated. Volkanovski took him down twice or something like that in that third round, but he did nothing with it. People are like, oh my gosh, Volkanovski outlanded Max. Max landed the harder shots. So where is your judging criteria there? But you know what? People will argue and they'll say things like, these are the rules, and they'll go by the rules. And then whenever the rules don't favor them, they then are like, oh my gosh, but Volkanovski did this. He did the takedowns. I'm like, bro, you were just arguing that takedowns don't mean anything if you can't do anything with them. Anyway, I don't want to get heated talking about that. But yeah, like I was saying, I'm just saying that Max, man, now Volkanovski has gotten so much better since that fight. And yes, I said it. He has gotten so much better since that second fight with Max Holloway. Now, we can argue that Max has also gotten better. But it's just that Volkanovski fighting the Korean Zombie, I believe that was a good warm-up match for him to fight Max now. The Korean Zombie was pretty much a walking punching bag with no head movement. So it was just kind of like he was able to work on his striking skills and work on his tools, sharpening his tools so that he'll be able to beat Max Holloway in the trilogy. I want Max to win, but I don't think that he's going to be able to. And I think with a third loss to Volkanovski is going to murder his legacy, man. And I hate that. Not murder it, but it's really going to severely harm it, man. Hey, look, but on the bright side, Robert Whittaker is kind of in your same spot. Except you're in line first to get the trilogy and possibly take a L. He's not. But to be real, I favor Robert Whittaker to beat Adesanya in the 3 match in the trilogy over Max Holloway beating Volkanovski in the trilogy. Because I've seen Adesanya's skills is starting to get a little stagnant, where Volkanovski's skills are improving. And so Max Holloway has to either improve with Volkanovski or improve even more than him. And we're kind of late in the career of Max Holloway, and it's starting to get a little vague, you know. Anyways, now we can move forward. So now let's finally talk about TJ Dillashaw versus Aljamain Sterling, which looks like it's going to be next. Now I'm gonna make a video breaking this down like a lot more than I'm going to do now, but I'm gonna just break it down a little bit just for people. I want to make it its own separate video. So real quick, let's talk about it, because let's talk about what's next for Aljamain. So Aljamain is pretty much set in stone. He's going to fight TJ next. If he can beat TJ, I'm pretty sure that they're going to make that third matchup with Petr Yan, you know. I'm pretty sure they're going to do that. Because I don't see anybody beating Petr Yan to get in front of him for a third match with Aljamain Sterling. And I'm going to say this, dude. Yes, the fight went the way it went. I believe that was a draw, bro. I know that I said this in the last podcast, but come on. That is literally a draw. It doesn't get any more, like, obvious than that. Nobody won that fight, man. Nobody won that fight. It's like, I don't see Aljamain Sterling doing enough to be like, he won the fight. Neither do I see Petr Yan doing enough to say, he won that fight. It should have been a draw. There needs to be more draws in MMA. In my opinion, raise both of their hands. Nobody won that fight. Draw. But it didn't work that way. They gave Aljamain Sterling the belt. And honestly, I see more evidence that Petr could have won than Aljamain winning. But it is what it is. I say that to say this. Petr Yan is going to starch him in the trilogy. Why? Because Aljamain Sterling took his back and wasn't able to submit him, but just held him there for the entire round. So that is Petr Yan can easily make adjustments to not have that happen again. We've seen that Aljamain Sterling is not able to outstrike Petr Yan on the feet. We've seen that he's barely been able to out-wrestle him, etc., etc. But if we've seen a hole in Petr Yan's game, it was in the wrestling. We all assume that Petr Yan had good takedown defense and good wrestling because of his Russian background, which is kind of funny. The dude's Russian, so we assume, this guy has to have some type of wrestling, which he may have, but not an extensive background as TJ. So we've seen Petr Yan get out grappled before, get out wrestled before. He's always came back to win, but we've seen him get out wrestled. So it wasn't just a, oh my gosh, it's just a, he has no holes in the game. He's this perfect fighter. I do think he was one of the most well-balanced fighters in the UFC, but you can be as well-balanced as you want to. You're going to have a hole in your game somewhere. And we seen that, you know, we seen it. And so, I say that to say this once again. TJ Dillashaw is going to pose a different threat, but also I believe that the danger factor is going to be the same amount as the Petr Yan matchup. I believe that if Petr Yan won that fight against Aljamain Sterling, TJ in a way was kind of screwed, because I just did not see a way that TJ was going to outstrike Petr Yan on the feet. It was an interesting striking style that Petr is going to have to face, but I think TJ was too slow. I think he's too hittable. I think that Petr Yan just is a much better boxer, much better kickboxer. I think that he was just going to pick TJ apart on the feet. TJ's going to get frustrated and eventually walk into something that's going to get him either stopped or get him dropped. And Petr Yan was either going to win on the scorecards or he was going to knock TJ out. Anyways, he's not facing Petr Yan. He's going to face Aljamain Sterling. TJ actually has an extensive wrestling background. He's been wrestling since like the 8th grade or some crap like that. TJ has good takedown defense as well as good wrestling himself. Aljamain Sterling is not going to be able to just take TJ down and just hold him in a submission position. He's going to have to come up with a different game plan because he's not going to out-wrestle TJ. He's not going to do that. I can see him taking his back similar to the way that he did to Corey Sandhagen and choking TJ out. But don't get blinded by that because of how easily he was able to take Corey's neck. Corey doesn't have any type of grappling background. He's been pure striking. So TJ has the tools necessary to stay safe on the ground and to defend the takedowns of Aljamain Sterling and cruise past him in the striking. TJ can definitely outstrike Aljamain Sterling. So basically what I'm saying is that this is not a good matchup for Aljamain. Petr wasn't a good matchup for him. TJ's also not going to be a good matchup for him. He's going to have to come with some tools that he's pulled out of his toolbox to beat TJ, because in my opinion, that is a rough matchup. He's not going to be able to just go the wrestling route. He's not going to be able to out-volume TJ. He's not going to be able to do any of that. He's definitely not going to be able to just outstrike TJ. So it's going to be interesting to see what Aljamain Sterling does with TJ Dillashaw. I'm excited for this matchup. I'm excited for TJ to see what he can do at the top of the division. Either way, I believe that if he beats Aljamain Sterling, he's probably going to face Petr Yan next. So, you know, the Corey Sandhagen fight is, quote, interesting, but I just don't see anybody really wanting to see that again. I think TJ just beats him easier this time. You know, I don't think he will have as much trouble as he did. So, anyways, yeah, so that's interesting. But like I said, I'm going to make a separate video breaking that down more than I just did. But let's hop into the questions. So our first question comes from Terrell Williams, and he basically asks, does Charles Oliveira stand a chance with Justin Gaethje on the feet? I'm going to say this. If his chin can take the blows of Justin Gaethje, then yes, it would go very similar to how Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev just went. A guy with no head movement but good striking versus a guy with good striking, very fast, but typically throws haymakers the entire time and throws power shots landing on his chin over and over again. So basically, we would be in for a very exciting fight if Charles Oliveira can withstand the blows of Justin Gaethje. But if he can't, no. If he gets dropped every time Justin Gaethje lands on him, no. But I'm going to say this, though. It's not smart that Charles Oliveira goes in and tries to strike with Justin Gaethje. If I'm Charles Oliveira, I think that he needs to find a way to get Justin Gaethje to the ground or somehow get his back and submit him and make it a quick night at the office. He doesn't want to he doesn't want to play the long game with Justin Gaethje, man. He doesn't want to do that. So, I hope that answers your question. Okay, so our next question comes from Wrestling Matches 23, and he asks, fantasy matchup, Prime Tony versus Prime Connor, who do you think will win? He also goes, appreciate your work, man. Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It means the world to me, man. Anyways, he goes Prime Tony versus Prime Connor. Okay, Prime Connor all day, man. I've said this a million times. Whenever they were looking to make the matchup back when Tony Ferguson won the interim strap, I said it. I said a lot of people are like, oh, Conor's going to slow down and Tony's going to tune him up on the feet and elbow him, cut him up. I said it. I said Tony Ferguson's got to find a way to get around that left hand. He's too hittable. And he showed very bad boxing fundamentals, especially defensively wise. When Tony Ferguson would throw his jab, he would lift his chin in the air so that whenever you counter him, literally, that was his way of evading your return shots. No, Conor McGregor was going to counter that jab all night long with that left hand. Basically, what I'm saying is, I just don't see how Tony Ferguson could stop that left hand from landing on him repeatedly. It would be pretty much that Justin Gaethje matchup, except Conor McGregor would be in southpaw. And Conor would land that left hand over and over again. Not to mention, Conor is a much more technically sound striker than Justin Gaethje, man. Justin Gaethje was just swinging haymakers, and whenever Tony would come in, Justin would swing a haymaker, but Tony being so hittable, it would land. Conor's not going to play that game. And a lot of people are like, Tony Ferguson's a zombie, man. He keeps walking forward. It was Tony Ferguson didn't respect his opponent's power. And yes, Conor crumbles under pressure, but not whenever he's countering you the whole time. Tony Ferguson pressures in a different way than Nate Diaz does, you guys. Nate Diaz uses a lot of clinch work. He hangs on you and gruels on you, make it a grueling fight, makes it a brawl. Tony Ferguson is all boxing. He walks forward and he boxes with you. Throws a lot of unorthodox techniques, but he's not defensive. Conor would have found holes around his boxing over and over and over again, and eventually the ref would stop the fight because he's just taking too much damage. I called it. Not to mention the leg kicks from Conor, from Prime Conor. So, yeah, man, it wouldn't have been a good matchup for Tony. I've said this a million times, but nobody wanted to believe me. I guess they'll believe me now. Anyways, moving on. Our next question comes from an OG of the channel, Dragon's Rage, and he asked, Prime GSP versus Prime Anderson Silva. Who do you think would win? Prime GSP. Anderson Silva didn't do very well against wrestlers, man. Good wrestlers, that is. Let me add that. Chris Weidman did what he did to him. I think GSP, who's a better striker than Weidman, has a good jab. I think that GSP would have probably beat him 2 out of the 3 rounds. Now, Anderson probably would have did some crazy stuff, knocked him down, countered him, did some things. Anderson would have been competitive, don't get me wrong. But I think that GSP would have took him down, controlled him, stay safe on the ground. Anderson would somehow work his way back up to the feet. GSP would jab him, leg kick him, outwork him, to be honest. Outwork him. Anderson Silva would do that flashy stuff with his hands, be like, oh, come on, try to get GSP up against the cage, and so that he can front kick him or counter him with something wild, and GSP won't play that game and just stick to the game plan, take him down, beat him up. So, GSP. Does that make GSP the GOAT over Anderson Silva, though? No, but we'll discuss that later in another podcast. Moving on. Okay, so I'm seeing that you guys kind of scattered your questions all over the place. I didn't say it at the beginning of the podcast. I forgot, and I'm not going to go back and try and edit this in. But remember, you guys, try to comment your questions under podcast episodes, under the last one, my latest one. Don't leave them under random videos because this is how they get lost, but I'm able to see these right now, so because you guys left it on my latest video. So I'm able to find these, but let's not make this a habit of just leaving random questions under random videos because that's how your questions not get answered because I won't see them. Anyway. Okay, so our next question comes from Kevin Lyon, and he goes, what if Khamzat Chimaev faced the top 5 light heavyweights and the top 5 middleweights? How would he do? And how would his fight with Leon Edwards go? I think Leon will win. As for the top 5 light heavyweights, I'm looking at them. Who's in the top 5 light heavyweights? Okay, so Jan Blachowicz. So Jan Blachowicz showed massive holes in his grappling against Glover Teixeira. Not only was Glover Teixeira able to crack him with a big left hand or right hand, whatever that was, not only was he able to crack him, he was able to take him down and submit him with ease. If Khamzat Chimaev is able to make the weight and not look too small in front of Jan Blachowicz, actually, never mind, because this guy is too easily hit, and Jan has that one-punch KO power. Khamzat's going to be small for the weight class. Yeah, I'm going to go with Jan Blachowicz, and I think that it would be a KO whenever he lands, because Khamzat doesn't move his head, man. And then, moving on, Yuri Prochazka, I actually don't mind his chances against Yuri Prochazka, actually. I'd actually favor him against Yuri Prochazka because Yuri Prochazka has been taken down and beaten up on the ground before. This guy has been out grappled before. And a lot of people are playing the same hype game with Yuri Prochazka that they're doing with Khamzat Chimaev. And you guys are going to see that Glover Teixeira is probably going to take this guy down and submit him with ease because Yuri Prochazka has a hole in his game when it comes to grappling. But we'll see. So I think that Chimaev could actually beat Prochazka. Yeah, but for the rest of these guys, to shorten your question, bro, I don't see it going very well for him, man. I mean, Dominic Reyes, all of these guys, man, Anthony Smith, all these guys are just too big, bro. They're too big and too much grappling experience. I just don't see it going very well for him at light heavyweight, to answer your question. Middleweight, you would think there'd be more success, but it's the same thing. Khamzat Chimaev thrives on being a weight bully. These guys at middleweight, like Robert Whittaker, Marvin Vettori, looking down the list at these guys, man, I don't favor Paulo Costa. I don't favor him against these guys because he's not just going to be able to take them down and just bully them. Whenever he met resistance with Gilbert Burns, and his reaction was, man, Gilbert Burns was a lot more stronger than I thought. Yeah, that's not going to be good going up against these bulky middleweights, man, who cut down from plus 200 pounds to make that weight class, mind you. So, yeah, I don't think that middleweight is key, but to be real, I actually favor his chances against the champion more than I favor his chances against Marvin Vettori. And I think that he could beat Sean Strickland, actually. I do think that he could beat Sean Strickland. But outside of him, I think he runs into problems with Marvin Vettori and Robert Whittaker. I just think those three guys, Vettori, Whittaker, and Adesanya, is going to be his kryptonite, man. He's not going to be able to just take them down and bully them on the ground. They're going to work their way back up to their feet, and just outstrike him on the feet with ease, except for Marvin. Marvin is just more so I think he's just going to outpoint him. Paulo Costa is going to brutalize him. It's not even going to be... Paulo Costa is going to TKO him in like the first or second round. Defend the takedown, sprawl and brawl, pretty much. So, yeah. Dude, welterweight, he needs to stay at welterweight if he wants to have a dominant career. Stay at welterweight, bro. Don't try and hop divisions and weight classes because the less and less your size is a factor, likely the chances you're not going to do very well in that fight. Anyway, your last question was, do you think that Leon Edwards can beat? No, I don't think that. No. Actually, seeing the way that his fight's gone with Li Jing Liang and Gilbert Burns, I think that he probably would have crushed Leon Edwards, and what that would have done is given us this false sense of security with Khamzat Chimaev. That would have made the hype train go even more crazy, and you guys would have seen him suffocate Leon Edwards for... He would submit Leon Edwards. He would do Leon Edwards similar to the way he did Li Jing Liang. I know that's crazy to say after seeing it. Leon backs up way too much, man. Leon backs up way too much and allows you to just literally push him up against the cage and take him down. Usman out-wrestled him years ago. We don't know much of his takedown defense now, but I don't think that fighting a huge Khamzat Chimaev, going in there, taking him down, working him down to the ground, I think Chimaev would have smashed him, basically, to answer your question. Backs up way too much, man. And from what we've seen, he has a wrestling deficiency, so... No, he would have dominated Leon Edwards. He probably wouldn't finish him in the first round, but he definitely would have submitted him in the second round, either by TKO or submission. Just probably almost as dominant as he did Li Jing Liang. Anyways, now we move on to our final question. Actually, I lied. We actually have two more questions. This has actually been the most questions we've ever received on the podcast, so shout out to you guys for that. But our next question comes from Hack You, and he basically asked, do I think Jan won the rematch? No, I answered that earlier. I think it was a draw. Yeah, I think it should have been a draw. But if the judges had to pick one with a gun to my head, I would have picked Jan. I would have said Jan won. Hopefully that answers your question. I would have scored it a draw, but if I absolutely had to pick a winner, I would have picked Jan. Anyway, now we move on to our last question. Okay, and our last question comes from Brianna Mitchell, and she asks, if Chimaev were to fight Usman, what do you think his game plan would be, and what are the chances that he would win by? Basically, if he were to win, how would he win? Okay, that's a good question. His chances to fight Usman, or his game plan to beat Usman, I think would be what it always is. Somehow try to get Usman to the ground get him on his back and smash him. And I already said, if he gets Usman to his back, he's going to smash Usman. Usman is probably not going to have the best bottom control. He's probably not going to be able to fight off his back very well. The guy has never been put on his back, so obviously what hasn't been seen, he probably doesn't have it, you know what I mean? I know that's a harsh assumption to make, but I can seriously see him being a complete fish out of water once he gets put on his back. So that's what I think his game plan would be, somehow get Usman to the ground and either submit him or smash him, like how it always is. And what would his chances of winning be by? Basically, how would he win? Yeah, like I said, either smashing him on the ground or submitting him. I don't think that he'll be able to knock Usman out due to the fact that he wasn't able to knock out Burns. So that's how I see it, either by ground and pound TKO or either by submission. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed the podcast, let me know. If you guys want your questions featured in the next podcast, leave your questions under this one. Do not scatter them under random videos. And to know if your question will be answered, I will like your question, and then it will get featured on the next podcast. It's been your boy Trippy, and I also want to give a special thanks to everybody who supports me, everybody who hits the subscribe button when I told them to. You guys really don't know the extent of what this does for my motivation. It lets me know I'm doing things right, and it lets me know that you guys actually enjoy the content and you guys want me to keep making more. Like, it's a push in the right direction, really it is. And it gives me motivation, a purpose. Like, I have a community of people who support me and they enjoy the work that I put out, and they want to see me continue to make videos. And I will. I want YouTube to be my career at some point. And you guys really continuously push me in the right direction. So I want to give a special thanks to you guys, all 367 of you. Anyway, it's been your boy Trippy, and I'm out, man.